today you are here for strategies to support student work completion. And a few items before we begin. This meeting is being recorded. You will receive the slides and your certificate of completion via email afterwards. At the end of the presentation, we'll be dropping in a brief survey. If you complete that survey, then you get the recording, slides, and your certificate of participation sent to you within 2 weeks of this forum. If you have questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box. If you feel more comfortable unmuting yourself and talking out, that's fine. We love interaction. If possible, please try to keep yourself muted when you're not talking. And also video, when you can. If not, we understand. But we love to see everybody's smiling faces. So we have an exciting update for you to provide for our future webinars. Rather than having you sign up once every month to get into the link to the next webinar, we now have it where we're registering individually through Zoom for the whole webinar series. So you won't have to spend all your time completing and signing up every single month. So Phoebe's dropping in the link to be able to sign up through that platform, and just click on the big register for free button, create your account, sign up or in with whatever method is best for you, answer a few quick questions for us, and then you will be signed up and directed to the SEL webinar series homepage. If as you're doing that, you have any problems, feel free to reach out to myself or Phoebe and we can support you with that. So we are trying to simplify everything for our world, and that's one of the big news that our team has been working on. So I'm Donna Trujillo. I am Vice President of Tiered Supports and Special Populations at Generation Schools Network. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, it's just me today. We typically have 2 people in these presentations to give a little change to voice and have a little bit greater interaction. However, you get the lone wolf standing today. I am formerly a director of the 3rd largest district in Colorado for special education. I've been with Generation Schools Network for a little over 6 years now. I started my career as a middle school special education teacher. However, I've taught pre-K through 12. I've serviced as a director 16 different districts in Colorado, not moving from district to district, but 10 at once in one role I had. And then through Generation Schools Network have expanded to serving over my career over 50, maybe 60 districts within Colorado, as well as other places in our nation. I also own my own company as an advocate for students with special and gifted needs. So I know how critical the work completion and having those tools and strategies are, because if a student feels comfortable completing their work, we can increase their attendance, lessen their anxiety, and make life easier for you as teachers. Phoebe, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, sure. My name is Phoebe Ambrosino. My pronouns are they, them. I have been with Generation Schools Network for a whopping 5 months at this point. I serve as the Communications, Events, and Product Development Coordinator. But today, I'm here to check the chat and make sure if y'all have any questions, need us to go back a slide or anything, or just have any comments. I'll be checking that chat very, very closely. So let me know if you need anything today.
Thank you. Thanks for your help today, too.
Yeah.
So what are we doing today? Well, we're going to do a quick warm-up activity, and then we're going to dig into executive functioning, how it impacts social emotional learning, how it's tied to our CASEL SEL competencies, the importance of self-identity in executive functioning, strategies you can use in your classroom, and then we'll do a wrap-up. And of course, as always, we do our Q&A, and you get some free resources at the end of this. So in the chat, I want you to take a moment before you type it in. Think about your morning routine. Now think about what happens if you're not able to follow part of that routine or any of it, or just a little blip happens. Type in the chat, what happens if your morning routine gets off course? And Phoebe, you can share out as it gets typed in.
Yeah, Cassandra said that I'm disorganized or frazzled.
Mm-hmm.
Kate shared that it felt off during the day. Jess said stressed, feels like the whole day is thrown off, feel like I'm racing against the clock. I definitely know what that feels like.
Yeah. I know sometimes when or at least when I lived in Denver, you'd leave with plenty of time and all of a sudden you'd hit traffic and the anxiety you feel as you're in that traffic. Am I going to get there on time? What do I need to do? How's this going to, and it just kind of gets my heart racing. And then when I get to my final destination, takes a bit to settle in. Any others that have come up, Phoebe? Okay. Um, it's the same we do this because that's executive functioning. Setting up our brains, getting in our routines, being able to plan for our next steps. And a lot of our kids that we serve, even the adults we work with, if their routine is set off or if their brain is unable to follow a routine or they need a routine set up, they can come in dysregulated. And like you shared, it could flow throughout the rest of the day, not feeling well, not feeling like they're productive, or just a little off kilter. So, in working with our students, it is an important piece to be able to set up those routines, follow those, and understand and help them re regulate when something doesn't happen or something does happen. So, what is executive function? These are our self regulation skills that help us plan, organize, focus, follow through. It's very complicated because we often have to juggle multiple tasks at a time. So we have a picture here of an air traffic control center because that's what our brain is like when we're functioning throughout the day. The brain has to hold multiple tasks and manage which ones are our priority, which one can I hold off on, all at the same time while we're thinking about what we have to do and what we want to do. So there can be many distractions and there can be emergencies that come up that then we have to hold our tasks over here and create a whole new list of things for us to get done to get through that emergency or even just through that moment. So executive functioning is like that air traffic control tower. Those planes coming in, you got to keep them all up in the air, make sure nothing crashes, make sure everyone lands on the ground safely. And then with SEL, so executive functioning includes academic skills such as critical thinking and remembering and following those multi-step directions. It also facilitates their social emotional capacities by helping with the control of strong emotions, being able to be flexible and resilient and adjust when things change, having that sense of persistence, and then that emotional awareness, not only of ourselves, but of others. I know sometimes when I'm in a meeting and I'm focused on what someone else just said and I'm trying to process that, and then somebody else jumps in, that can throw me off track and be frustrating. I have to maybe take a moment, keep focusing on what I was focusing on, make a note of what the other person said, and then be able to process that. That's all part of executive functioning. And our students in our classrooms have to do this every day. You'll be providing instruction, they'll be attentive, and then there's an announcement from the office to call a student to the office, and wow, the student's off track. We got to re-engage. For some kids, that's more difficult than for others. So as we work through this, we're going to learn some strategies. So how do SEL and executive functioning connect? So at the base of our brain, we have our basic needs, our survival brain, right? Our brain stem. And then as we move forward to the brain, through the brain, we have our reactions, our emotional control, our ability to handle. And the frontal lobe of our brain is where our social, emotional, and executive functioning develop. And they're the last parts of our brain to develop. So students need support. This is not a skill that we're born with. We must think about the brain development and teach students throughout the course of their school journey to learn these skills, adapt them, and scaffold them based upon a certain situation or environment. And then there's a reciprocal relationship between SEL and executive functioning. So you can see that learning and relationships, social emotional learning, executive functioning are all like cogs. They all work together. It's like a clock. If one piece is missing, it doesn't work so well. So how can we help? Well, like I said, we can build those effective executive functioning skills by supporting and encouraging their smallest efforts. It's that baby stepping, modeling the skills for ourselves, engaging them in activities to practice those skills, being a consistent and reliable presence they can trust. When I say that, it's not just about, okay, I'm giving you this, now do it, but it's also demonstrating and modeling your emotional control, your ability to overcome obstacles, your ability to re-engage when you're thrown off track. Students watch, they listen, and even talking through what you're doing, what you're thinking can be a helpful tool and skill that students can learn. And then we use scaffolding to guide them from complete dependence on adults to that gradual independence. The whole piece, protect them from chaos, violence, and chronic adversity. We can do that in our classrooms if we as the adult are self-regulated, monitoring, and modeling. So we're going to correlate executive functioning and SEL competencies. In the chat, I want you to enter which of these competencies, the ones in the center, the 5 competencies in the center, executive functioning is related to. So which of those competencies house our executive functioning? And Phoebe, once again, I'll ask you to read those out loud.
You got it. Kate says all of them.
Okay.
So does Jessica.
Okay. Anybody else have a guess?
Cassandra says same.
Okay. Well, let's see if you pass the test. You can see that these areas, so the self-awareness is tied to avoiding distractions, controlling rash responses. Self-management is that ability to follow multi-step directions. And remember, responsible decision-making is managing those long-term assignments. Persistent problem solving as well. Those relationship skills, collaborating with others. Now you see social awareness does not have an arrow there, although I personally could argue that by being able to watch others, learn from others, and manage our own emotions and our own responses, that does develop social awareness. But specifically for a discussion today, we're looking at those 4 specific areas: self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, and those relationship skills. And then critical developmental factors. So when you get the presentation, there's going to be a link for you to read further on the children's relationships and how the activities they engage in, the opportunities they have to engage and the places where they live, learn, and play all affect their development. I was in a meeting prior to this for a student who is a foster child, and because of their development and the trauma they experienced when they were younger, they have reactive attachment disorder, which then makes them really struggle to relate to not just the adults, but their peers. And so providing them and affording them opportunities to learn those skills along with the executive functioning skills is what we're working on for that specific individual. It can be multiple factors that we have to find where in those developmental stages there may be gaps and bring those in as well. And then the importance of self-identity in executive functioning. We need students to know who they are. The other thing is, how do they see me? Oftentimes, as human beings, we see ourselves one way, but others see you in a different view or a different way. And having the awareness on both sides, that's where the social awareness comes in too, then you're able to say, what is possible for me? So a lot of times we can think back to people who inspired us, who helped us through, and maybe they saw us in a different light than we saw ourselves and shared that with us. And it helped us open up and feel a sense of purpose and a sense of hope. And again, when you get this presentation, there will be a link for you to review more information on that and some tools and strategies for supporting that self-identity. So now I'm going to pause this for a second. There's not going to be sound. I want you to take a moment and just watch what you see in the video and what you see these people doing. So after watching that video, what are your thoughts? How does this relate to executive functioning? What skills did they need to develop in order to do this? What was their journey to get there? Feel free to unmute or add in the chat.
You said planning.
Mm-hmm. Phoebe, what did you see?
Yeah, a lot of trial and error probably to get that good.
Yeah.
Cassandra shared critical thinking. Mm-hmm.
Okay. What about task initiation and follow through? Do you think that they could start and stop midair? It's once you're started, you keep going. So with our executive functioning, these are the skills we're working on specifically, that flexible thinking, that ability to adjust and adapt, the working memory. Remember, like that air traffic control slide before, you have to hold information in your mind so that you can keep planning and keep going forward. That self-monitoring of how you're doing in that moment, maybe you need to then adjust or take another piece from your working memory and add that in. The planning and prioritizing, having those goals set, I like to backward plan my goals, and for students, that's helpful too, so I almost think that could be number one. Task initiation, to take that set of tasks and get it started on them. And then organization, keeping track of that both physically and mentally. All of this requires that impulse and emotional control. And I know they are numbered 1 through 8 as steps. So if you're working with a student who's developing these, you can use these steps when you're planning goals or writing goals or working to develop your plans and your instruction, your activities by taking one chunk at a time. Also, if you're working with your students and maybe a group of students, you see that they're really having trouble getting initiated, you could always go back to the one before and say, okay, maybe we need to work on this, and then that'll give them the push. Maybe they don't have enough information to get started yet. So going back and using this can help you identify maybe some skills that you need to go back to and also know when they're ready to move forward. So this graphic, I love this because it brings together a perfect example of what our mind is doing. It's both components. It's not just our logical mind, but it's also our emotional mind. And those come together to create our wise mind. And students really can relate to the wise mind when you're talking with them. Are you using your wise mind, your logical mind, or your emotional mind? So that emotional mind is where that empathy, art, creativity, feeling, and imagination come into play. Our logical mind, thinking, practicality, math and science live there. Rationality, laws, bringing those together create our wise mind, like an owl. So now we're going to watch a quick video on developing executive functioning with priority lists, and let me know if you cannot hear the sound.
There are certain foundational skills like executive function, self-regulation, that are prerequisites for the formation of more complex skills like perseverance and self-direction. A child can become a productive and engaged learner from any developmental starting point as long as we intentionally build those skills.
Any volunteers? Go up and do a priority list. Abdi, thank you.
The most active research right now is actually about adolescence. There are skills that develop uniquely in adolescence that can't develop in earlier periods. An example of one of those is executive function skills, which enable us to organize and prioritize. By asking students to prioritize their tasks, the teacher builds that skill set in an entire classroom.
In 8th grade, there's a ton of different deadlines and work to manage, so we do the ABC priority list in order to help them manage all those different deadlines.
Somebody always goes up to start a priority list. It helps us like categorize everything that we have and like organize from most important to like, least important.
We have the West Virginia versus Barnard case questions for social studies
What does that do?
today.
So that's a high priority.
We have a practice clause that we need to do for science class.
They tell me each assignment and like when it's due or like how important it is.
We have the JIAS observation for science.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
They share out all the different deadlines that are roaming around in their head, and then they know how to go through the protocol of prioritizing.
Can you help Abdi to figure out what the A1 is?
JIAS observation.
I think so, because it's overdue, right? So if it's overdue, you gotta get that done first. And then what would be an A2?
The West Virginia versus Barnard questions.
It wasn't a teacher saying you should. It was a student saying, here's what I think are the ways in which these activities should be prioritized. So in effect, what this teacher was doing was modeling and teaching executive function skills.
If you're kind of overwhelmed by your work, then you can kind of like know what to do first and then just kind of like categorize it and get it done efficiently.
Okay, so which one of those things is probably gonna be your frog?
Mark Twain said, if you wake up every morning and eat a frog, everything else will taste great. So I taught them to take their frog from the list, which is the thing they want to do the least, and get it out of the way, because everything else will seem easy.
A frog is like the most important assignment, like the one I'm really worried about.
Dry ice. So, okay, you gotta do that. What's your frog?
It helps me like realize I need to get this done faster than I need to get this done. So even though this is more fun, I need to get this out of the way before I can do this.
So as soon as we're done with that priority list, I notice everyone gets right to work because they have it spelled out very clearly for them.
This is the building of executive function skills in kids.
So, what was your frog today? Please type that into the chat box. Oops, sorry guys.
There are certain requisites for the form.
Do we have any responses, Phoebe?
Pete just shared dealing with a challenging parent email.
There you go. That's a good one. The frog. And for some kids, having the frog first may not work. Sometimes they do need to mix it up. They might need to start with an easier task and then tackle a frog and maybe take a break and do another easy task and then go back to the frog. What I want you to know is that it's the voice and choice that are important. And like it said in the video, setting up a plan, even if it's different from others, can work for a child. And it seems very simple, but it's important. And of course, we talked about this at the beginning with our warm-up activity. Routine matters. So things you can do, posting your visual schedule of the day in front of the class or by subject. What I liked when I did this as a teacher, I liked because then if something changed or we couldn't get to something, I could just quickly erase it, write it up, then the students knew what was coming next. And we could talk through if they were worried or if they needed any support in changing that routine. Consistent routines, especially for students who have trauma, with disabilities, those who are gifted, they need that consistent routine. If something's going to change, they need to know in advance, as much in advance as possible, and be allowed to ask questions about the why, the how, the when. You may have to show them where they need to go if something is different from their routine. And then those materials available and kept in the same location and organized. So as a middle school teacher, I know that those kids were like Pigpen coming into my classroom, a lot of them. And so I had a little magazine rack that I got, don't even know where, donated from somewhere. And I put all of their work each day into a folder. And when they walked in, they grabbed that folder, sat down at their desk. If I had a student who consistently was missing a pencil, I could slide their pencil into that. And they would sit down. It saved so much time getting ready, getting going, and it helped them stay organized. And they had a need to do side and a completed side. And then they would, as they finished their work, they got to move it over. And that helps too with that sense of completion. You can teach them even to have on their desk work that needs to be done on one side, work they've done on the other side. They can then see they're moving forward. That stack might be getting smaller, this one might be growing, and feel that sense of accomplishment. And then also posting those learning objectives and tying it to the purpose. A lot of time, like my own kids say, why do I have to do math? Well, tell me about what you're learning and let's talk about how you might use that in the real world. That can help them understand why they have to do it, and with that task initiation and follow through. And then providing examples of completed work, especially with the larger projects. If a student doesn't know what the end goal is, that can create anxiety. They may worry about, am I doing this right the whole way? Which can then be a barrier for them to continue forward. So if you're able to provide an exemplar and then work backward and plan backward from there, that can be super helpful too. And then modeling those expectations. Tying back to that work, but also for yourself, showing that you are organized, showing that you have your routine, talking through when that routine changes, working with the students to then problem solve, what do we need to do now? Colors are another great way for organizing. If you have any dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia training, this is one of the big pieces that work for students with learning disabilities, but it works for all. So using the color coding system automatically connects our brain to our brain, and it helps us with that working memory, that recall, and our brain sees that color, and we don't have to think a lot about, oh, that's related to this, or I need to do this. So highlighting the key words in the same color, vocabulary words you might need to look up, words you need to remember, etc. And then you can set up a color system for each separate subject or task. So next, we're going to look at an example of this in math. At the bottom of this, you have a math fact word bank, the words into math. This little tool is great for word problems because it makes one less thing that a student has to hold in their brain. So if they see the symbol or they see the word, they can match the word to that symbol and vice versa. And then having them, when they're doing their math problems, highlight the numbers they're going to need to pull down for the equation in one color, and then what they're doing for the next to get that final answer. So here you can see an example of the highlighting with colors for math. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Sarah Ward. I highly recommend, if you haven't seen her information, looking this up and learning more about this, because it's a simple way to provide executive functioning. And you can see here that it works backward. 1, then 2, 3, then you go back 4, 5, 6. So 1 is like what I've been saying. What will it look like when I'm done? They can write it, they can sketch a picture, or they can look at the exemplar you may have provided. Next is breaking it down by steps. What do I need to get done? How long will it take for each step? Get ready. What materials do I need? I need to get myself ready. And then 4, what materials do I need and prepare my space? 5, that sketch time, or developing those checkpoints of I need to work on this for 5 minutes, then this, and then getting feedback from the teacher before they proceed, because one of the most frustrating things is for a student to get done and then be told, nope, that's wrong. Go back and do it again. If we guide them and we do check-ins, that can help them understand and learn as they're going, versus, oh no, I have to now do it all over. And then knowing when to stop. What worked, what didn't, having those conversations at the end to adjust for next time. And again, you can see here, colors, the red is when they stop, the yellow is they're getting ready to do, and the green is go, get it done, and then you go back to stop. Some tips for organization. The accordion folders are great, especially for students who really, they come in and their folders are a mess and they're looking and they can't find it. But if you have an accordion folder with math, science, social studies, they can then slide in work that they've completed or what they need to do. They can even have a section for completed work. For single subjects, if they're working in language arts and they have to read and then they need to do a worksheet or an essay, you can have separate dividers for that too. Those color-coded planners, calendar reminders on your phone. There's many apps for this too. The drawer system, where you can have 3, 4, 5 drawers, and they have 1, 2, 3 with all the materials in there. They can pull it out, finish it, and then get the next drawer, pull it out, and get that done. The visual checklist, we talked about that. And for some students, a visual timer, whether it's on their phone, a watch, or a visual timer in the classroom where they count. Some of them are red, and it'll show when the time is ticking down and the red will get smaller. And then there's some interventions, a little graphic for y'all for some other ideas. Next, that cognitive overload. you get to do a little activity here. I'm gonna play this video and I want you to watch it. After the ad, of course. Oops.
The monkey business illusion. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball. The correct answer is 16 passes. Did you spot the gorilla? For people who haven't seen or heard about a video like this before, about half miss the gorilla. If you knew about the gorilla, you probably saw it. But did you notice the curtain changing color or the player on the black team leaving the game? Let's rewind and watch it again. Here comes the gorilla, and there goes a player, and the curtain is changing from red to gold. When you're looking for a gorilla, you often miss other unexpected events. And that's the monkey business illusion. Learn more about this illusion and the original gorilla experiment at The Invisible Gorilla.
All right, so in the chat or unmuting, who saw the gorilla? Who saw the color change? Who got the passes right? What did you see, Phoebe?
I'll say I've seen it so many times at this point that I always just like fixate on the gorilla. I'm like, don't miss the gorilla. I always miss the other things.
Anybody else see anything or not see anything?
Sandra got the passes right and missed the gorilla.
Okay.
Jess had seen it before as well, but missed the gorilla and color changes the first time.
Okay. So why do we do this activity? Well, that's what cognitive overload looks like. You can be so focused on one thing because one, you're told, or two, you expect, that you miss the other pieces around you. And so executive functioning is much like that. You're focused on one thing, you get interrupted, and then your brain shifts to something else. So if I had stopped the video in the middle and said, oh, watch for the gorilla, your brain may not have remembered to count the passes. So executive functioning can create cognitive overload if we put too much in and if we focus our attention too much. That's why we need to take the time to discuss, to develop the skill sets, and really make sure they're focusing on what needs to be focused on. Provide those check-ins with them along the way so that they don't miss the gorilla or they don't miss the color change, but can still focus on how many passes they need. Now let's talk about learning space. Again, we want to make sure the materials are organized and they have what they need. Their materials, like I said, on the left are to be done. The ones that are finished can move to the right. Prioritize and organize the work in those actionable steps. So is it easiest first, most difficult first? Do they do easiest, most difficult, easier, most difficult? What's their frog? Those are all strategies that you can learn to set up a learning space and make those actionable steps. And then, of course, free of visual and auditory distractions. So a lot of students have attention or focus concerns or sensory overstimulation. And so if it's noisy, does it harm to allow them to listen to music or use noise canceling headphones, choose a different space to work? They could even turn toward the wall, have a folder cubicle, location of the seating that's based on the individual learner. Oftentimes I see IEPs with flexible seating written into them or preferential seating. Okay, well, what does that mean? For some students, that may be in close proximity to the teacher or right in front of the board. Others may need to leave and take a break, so seated next to the door. For others, they may need to get up and walk around, so maybe the back of the classroom. That flexible seating for each individual learner is important, and giving those options too. One of my favorite schools that I observed just happened to be my children's elementary school. They had set up where the colors of the school were earth tones. So teachers had a palette that they could choose from for their classrooms, and they could pick from that palette. They would paint the room that color, and then they took an additional step. They had curtains made in that color of choice. And then when something was on the wall that they weren't using, it would be closed and covered by the curtain. So often we go into elementary classrooms, especially, sorry, elementary teachers, but there's all these beautiful creations and vibrant colors and different little animals and pictures of students up there. That's all visual stimulation. And for many kids, it can be overwhelming. So if there is potential or a way to cover things that aren't being used and then open them up when they're needed, that can help with that visual distraction. And then also the noise. One thing that's not on here that we don't think about is the noises that we may be filtering out, but for some they can't filter out. So I'm going to pause for a minute, and I want you to listen to what you hear in the room you're in that maybe you haven't heard or maybe you have. So I'm going to pause, listen to see for what you hear. In the chat or unmuting, tell us what you heard.
This is a fun exercise for me right now because I am currently taking my first meeting from my new apartment. So I'm listening to all the different creaks that I'm hearing in the floorboards and the walls and just like getting used to what the sound is here.
Yeah, now that you've done it, now it's probably going to drive you crazy the rest of the night.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna think about this all night.
Sorry.
That's okay. Cassandra said that they heard the fan.
The fan, okay. Anybody else? I heard my refrigerator because I'm sitting in our living area. And I can also hear a little bit the wind in the trees outside. So why I stopped you to do this activity is there are some students sitting in your classroom that cannot filter out that noise. That fan may be all they hear. That creaking may be all they hear, or they hear a creak and it distracts them like a squirrel. Like, what was that? An example I used to work at a school and we were next to the river, but across from that was a highway. And I had a 5th grade student and he just was like, he couldn't attend, he couldn't focus. And I took him into the classroom one day with no one present. And I sat and talked to him and I said, tell me, I went through the 5 senses. And when we got to the auditory, to the hearing, he was able to identify that all he could hear when sitting in the classroom, even when the teacher was instructing, were the cars passing on the highway. Even though those cars were probably a quarter of a mile away, that's all he could hear. So that told us, as his educators, that we could find some ways to filter out the noise. We did noise canceling headphones. He also went for an evaluation at an organization here in Colorado, and they fitted him with a little ear filter. They identified that one ear was hearing and not filtering as greatly as the other, and so they put a little filter in his ear. And oh my gosh, after that, guess what? he was able to attend, he was able to focus. So sometimes it's the littlest thing in our learning space that's causing a problem, or it could be multiple things. Just wanted you all to know and take a step back next time you're in your classroom. Go through your 5 senses. Even you can even do it with the students, and you might be amazed at what comes out from that conversation. And then motivation. I'm constantly hearing, how do I motivate this student? They don't seem to care. So motivation is what gets us started. Habit is what keeps you going. How do we create that motivation? Again, we have to teach it. So we need to break our tasks into small, manageable chunks. We may need to provide positive feedback and appreciation. Using open-ended questions, it will also get you more information. So rather than saying, are you doing okay? And having the student say yes, say, can you tell me what you're working on? Can you tell me more about what you're doing? What is it that's difficult for you? What's easy for you? Those open-ended questions for some students can help you also determine why they're stuck and help them get them unstuck. Rewards can be helpful. Some students thrive on rewards, some don't, but if they do, little things can matter, or even a little smiley face or a check when they've done something right. And then providing those structured movement times and brain breaks. Oftentimes, students just need a quick walk, or they might need to go get a drink of water. Some may need that heavy work, so carrying a carton of books to the office or delivering a note to the office. That's not heavy work, but it can be a little bit of a brain break. And I know at the end of my day, my work day, my brain is fried. For me, I can go and start cooking, and that brings me back. So finding what works for each student, finding what works for yourself is a way to reset and get motivated again. And then choice. So allow students choice to set up their tasks. When are they going to take a break? What subjects or tasks in what order? What motivators might they want? What rewards might they work toward? And it might be small rewards working toward a larger reward, or for some students, a larger reward at the end. It's based on the individual needs. And then those learning supports, like I said, checks for understanding, providing a visual cue for requesting support. A lot of students have trouble asking for help. We as adults have trouble asking for help. So you can set up a hand cue, right? It can be something simple like if I put my thumbs up, I need help, or I'm okay. You can do checks like that. An object on the desk, something as simple as if their pencil is placed at the top of the desk, they need help. Or they have a Post-it and they move it to a different side of their desk. Anything like that can help them with requesting the support and not looking different, and teach them those advocacy skills. And then for students who over ask or rely on your help, you may consider those little Post-it flags. You can put them on the edge of the desk, and each one represents one question. And then when they turn that in, they pull it to the other side when they've asked a question. And then once they're out of those questions or those flags, they then have to find another way to seek help. And then 3 before me, you have to ask 3 others before you come to me. And asking students to state what they did to find the answer can help reinforce those skills for next time and help them understand that there are other ways for support rather than just the teacher needs to help me. So we're going to do a quick breakout room. Well, actually, we're going to do about a 10-minute breakout room. In the chat, Phoebe is going to drop a link. There is a you'll open that link, open it before you go into the chat, please. So when we did this training in the past, or this forum, or this activity, actually, not even this forum, we created a list. We generated a list with our participants. And what we want you to do in your breakout room is review that list and add if you have any other ideas that aren't on there. So Phoebe, when you're ready, you can break us into the breakout room, and we'll take 10 minutes for this. Do you guys want to, one of you or both of you share what you talked about a little bit?
Yeah, Jessica was at work, so I'm happy to chat. And our other person was on the phone and she maybe just got disconnected.
Okay.
Oh no.
No.
So really, we just kind of had a conversation. The person on the phone couldn't see the list. So I was just kind of giving them the broad topics, and we just talked about in all of our experiences, what works with one might not work for another. And a lot of it is trial and error and figuring out what works. Because every kid can be so different. Sometimes there are some things that generally work for everyone. Jessica shared that she has implemented like a visual schedule with Velcro, and it kind of goes through their topics of the day, and the students, once they finish something, they remove it and put it in the done pile, and it's made a huge difference in her classroom. So that was kind of fun to hear that.
Awesome. What are your biggest struggles?
Again, I can kind of speak for them. I think just trying to adapt to all. I mean, every learner can be really different, and I think it can be frustrating when you find something that works for some and you're like, oh, this is going to be great, and you implement it in a couple places and it doesn't maybe work for everyone. So you end up feeling like you're reinventing the wheel. But I like having this, list in one place of just kind of reminders. I think sometimes we forget about really simple things that can make a big difference.
Right. And so, yeah, keep it simple, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes as teachers, we get like like with the passing of the balls, we get so focused on this new thing that we learned, this new thing that's going to work for all. And then we spend all of our time putting it into place, and then it falls flat on its face. Right. And so sometimes it is just those simple strategies and things you don't even have to think about, that maybe you do something that could help your kids that you don't even think about. So as we're going through our day, thinking about what we use too, and that's where we can generate new ideas that aren't new. Anything else you guys want to share?
Just shared in the chat. Agreed, biggest struggle would be behavioral issues when I have 30 other kids in the room and I'm the only teacher. But an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, which I thought was very well said.
100%, could not agree more. It's a lot, and it feels like it's just keeps going and going and going. You solve one problem, then there's another, but that's our role, right? That's why we do what we do. And having our little simple toolkit and tool chest, we can make it happen. And kids love engaging and helping, so letting them pick some ideas and trying them themselves too, or having them help you implement them. Our kids, just like adults, often listen to somebody who's not the teacher, and students can teach each other as well, and then have that buy-in too. So, shifting priorities. Guess what? We're going to watch that video again. And this time I want you to look and see if you notice everything. If you can pay attention to the number of passes, even though you know it's 16, make sure your brain counts 16. If you can see the gorilla, and if you can see the color change.
It's the weekend and my son's stitches need to come out. But my primary care isn't open. Instead,
The monkey business illusion. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball. The correct answer is 16 passes. Did you spot?
Okay, how was it this time, guys?
I think I got them all, including the player in the black shirt leaving.
Okay. And you were able to count the passes too?
Yeah, Jess is also in the Got It All Club.
Yay! So why we did it again? Because it is an example of if you know what to look for, if you know what you need to do, your brain can do it. And that's what our students need. They need to know what they need to do, when to do it, and identify how to do it. And if we can do it, if we can provide them with that, that right away takes one task and decreases that cognitive energy needed to complete. Do we have any questions today? I know it's a small group. Phoebe and I were talking about that in the breakout rooms. I'm open if you have a kid that you want to talk about, or a student or a situation too. I can help you with that too. All right, well, Phoebe's going to drop the link for the feedback survey. You can even use your phone and scan it with the QR code. Once you've completed the survey, we will send you the recording, the materials, and your certificate of completion, which you can use for your license renewal. And additionally, we do use this feedback to adapt and adjust our topics, our presentation styles, and provide you with what's best for you and what you really need. So we don't just do this because. We appreciate you taking the time to do so. Our next forum will be on Tuesday, November 12th from 4 to 5:30. My partner Zach will be back with me, and we'll be talking about coping strategies for students and staff. We know this coming time of year can be very wearing and trying. We have a lot of students who struggle. We ourselves struggle because the holidays are coming. And so we're trying to get ahead of it this year and help you all with some skills and tools to get through that season. Also, there are ways that we can support you. If your district needs support in any area, we can develop grants. We'll research and find grants for you. We can come in and deliver professional development, coach and mentor, even observe, and then help with reviewing, developing, and implementing processes or anything else you need. Also linked here is the SEL curriculum with our monthly themes and grab and go resources. And then something that I behoove you to take the time to click on is the Moat Note. This is something that was developed by a colleague of mine. It's a small book that students can use that actually walks them through executive functioning skills and has a lot of fun and engaging activities for them. It provides explanations, but then reinforces with visuals and activities. And by the end, if they follow through, many see a huge leap in their executive functioning skills. And then we have the link for an Empowering Education SEL curriculum, which also has some more resources and lessons for you. And here's some articles that you can refer to as well for future or whenever you need to, and based upon grade level as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out at any time. And Phoebe and I'll hang out for a bit while you complete your surveys. Feel free to disconnect whenever you're ready. Thanks for joining us and have a beautiful evening.